You have to have people skills. I mean, that's a must because you deal with people who maybe don't travel very often, or they're cranky, or they're tired, or they had death in the family, whatever the case may be, you have to have the people skills. Also, you have your crew. So the crew changes every time. So I could be flying the same trip, and I could have, potentially different flight attendants on every leg, right? So you need to have the ability to get along with people.
Mariya, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Awesome. Cool. So you're a flight attendant with Alaska Airlines, and you've been a flight attendant for 6 years.
Almost 6 years.
Almost 6 years. And so I appreciate you being here, and hopefully we'll be able to, not in depth, but go through your take on your job for anyone out there who might be curious. So did you always want to be a flight attendant?
No, I didn't actually. Never even thought about it.
Never?
Yeah. No, never even thought about it. I remember actually when I was younger, and I knew a couple whose daughter was a flight attendant, and she flew internationally, and I thought it was glamorous, but she didn't have a family, and she was in her 40s, and I thought, oh my gosh, a woman in her 40s, no children, no husband, that's a failure. Like for a Russian girl, that's a failure right there. I'm like, I don't want to be a flight attendant, know, if that's what it means, that you travel all the time and you can't have a family.
You can't have family.
I mean, that was my take as a 16-year-old outsider looking in. I'm like,
Yeah.
So no, that was never even on the horizon.
Wow.
To be a flight attendant.
So you were a stay-at-home mom, and then how'd you come about thinking of becoming a flight attendant?
So my husband met a flight attendant and just chit-chatted with her, and he mentioned to her that I would like to do something part-time because I didn't want to work full-time because I didn't want to leave my kids, but I wanted to do something to stimulate the brain cells. I mean, completely honest.
Okay.
And she said, oh, she could be a flight attendant because you could just fly a little bit here and there, and then, and you'll be, and then you're at home. Well, and so I met with her and I had a coffee with her.
And she was with Alaska flight attendant.
She was with Alaska flight attendant, and she is absolutely wonderful. And she was upfront and honest, and she did tell me that a life like that. So she was a senior flight attendant at the time when I met her. So she flew what we call Arctic turns. So they're very early report. You get up at, I don't know, whether 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So basically you are done by lunchtime.
Okay.
So something like that is perfect for a mom. You make sure your kids are good to go for school in the morning. You go fly your turn. You come back and you're home the rest of the day, right?
That was her life.
That was her life.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And she was upfront and honest. She did say that, when you start your job, you're going to be on reserve. That means you're callable, any day or night on your days on. And, so she explained it to me, and I thought, okay, well, that doesn't sound too bad. Let me apply. And I applied with Alaska Airlines. I applied 3 times.
Okay.
So
when you say applied 3 times, you applied
I
and then
applied,
you didn't get hired?
went through the interview, didn't get hired, had to wait 6 months, apply again, didn't get hired. Same thing. Went through the interview, did the whole thing, didn't get hired.
So
and then
after 2 times of not getting hired, what makes you say I'll do it again? Because I wouldn't do that.
Because I'm stubborn.
You're stubborn. Okay.
Because I wanted it, and they always tell you in the interview, when you go through the process, they always say, we only have 2 minutes to get to know you. So we don't have enough time. You could be the most wonderful person in the world. You could be the most perfect fit for the company, but we didn't see it. So apply again. And so that's what I did. I'm like, okay, and so I remember what I did. I put it on my calendar, and once those 6 months were closed, I would look at Alaska Airlines and I'm like, gosh dang it, I'm going to get hired. So.
Wow. Okay. So, you interview for the 3rd time and you get hired. And, did the interview 6 years ago to today, do you know if the interview process changed much or? I
don't think so. And I don't even know, I know, during the first interview, I know what I said wrong because, when they hire as a flight attendant, especially because they know you're going to be reserved and everything else. So the keyword, the buzzword is flexibility.
So
They want you to be flexible.
Okay.
And I'm sitting in front of the guy that's doing the interview. And I said, oh, well, you know what? I'm a really good planner. I plan everything, which I am.
Right.
I'm like, I have plans for everything and I have a backup plan for everything and everything on my calendar. He's like,
The interviewer.
The interviewer,
Okay.
he's nodding, and what he was probably thinking is like, okay, reserved for days is not going to work for this girl
Oh my
because her well-developed plans just went out in the trash.
And you had kids at home. Mm-hmm. And so when you were interviewing, did you know that your life won't look like this lady, senior flight attendant, pictured it to be?
Maybe somewhat. I don't think it quite registered. If I were to go back in time, if I'm completely honest, if I were to go back in time, because my kids were little at the time, and knowing how difficult it was for them, I wouldn't have done it. I would have waited until they were older. But now that my kids are older, they still don't like it when I'm gone. I mean, if I'm completely honest. So
it is a huge part of the job.
It is a huge part of the job. So I think unless your kids grew up knowing that lifestyle, it's going to be a change for them no matter what. You know what I mean? So they love it when I'm home. They enjoy the benefits of the job, the traveling that we have done. But given a choice, they want their mom home, So that's why when I talk to young flight attendants, young girls flight attendants, we sit on the jump seat together and they're not married yet. And I say, you're in the best position for this job. You're young. You're not married yet. You're going to gain your seniority. So by the time you're married and you have children, you're going to have this wonderful schedule. You can be home as much or as little as you want to,
point.
You can be at home all week. And then for the weekend, you can tell your husband, you know what? I picked up a 2-day Hawaii. I will see
you later.
I'll see you later. I love you, honey, but mama needs a break. So, from that point of view, like you said, you asked me if I knew that's what my life is going to be like. No,
obviously
I didn't.
not really until you actually did it and lived
until
it.
you actually do it, and then, but by that time you're like, okay, I'm already doing it and I understand that there's this difficult period, but I gotta go through it. You know what I mean? But, the 5 weeks of training, they were hard because you're away from your family. I mean, if you live in the same city where the training is going on, that's not such a big deal. But, we lived in Alaska at the time. Training was done in Seattle. So it's 5 weeks.
Oh, you were living in Alaska. Okay.
So it's 5 weeks of not seeing your family. And it's difficult, it's difficult for, for a mom, but I think it's even more difficult for the kids because I was busy. I remember getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I would go around, I would do something because I knew I would be sitting in the classroom a whole day. And so, and then we would go to the classroom. I can't remember 7 or 8 o'clock, right? I mean, that's when it began. And then we wouldn't get out till 4 or 5 in the afternoon, right? And then you come back into your hotel room and you study. Because you can only have, what is it, 80%?
80% pass rate.
80% pass rate for your test. So you're like, okay, I'm already here. I'm already invested. I got a pass.
Wow.
And so you go and you study. So your days are busy. So you don't have a whole lot of time to miss your family. Whereas your family is back with their routine and they have this person that is missing from their lives,
Interesting.
So, if I were to advise a girlfriend of mine, I mean, I would definitely tell her all of that. I think the best place to become a flight attendant is either to be very, very young before you start the family, or, we have older flight attendants, like say if my kids were grown right now and I became a flight attendant, that's the best because there's nobody waiting for me at home. There's nobody needing me, but at the same time, I can be available. If my child has a college graduation or some kind of a project or whatever they want to show, they tell me, I put on my bid schedule for next month, and then I'm available.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? But nobody's waiting for me at home, and nobody's disappointed if if I'm reserved and I got called out again.
Wow. So in your opinion, the best times to become a flight attendant, if you could have controlled it, is prior to starting a family or after you're done raising your children?
After you're done raising your children, yeah.
Gotcha. And it's possible to be a flight attendant and start a family at the same time, but it's tougher to become a flight attendant while your children are young.
Yes. Well, and I think if I had worked when my kids were young, it would have been different. But they went from having their mom full time, 100%, day and night, 24/7, mama's right there, to, whoa, mama's not there 5 weeks at all. And then it's like, what do you mean you're not going to be home for 4 days? What's that mean? How does that work? You know what I mean? So, but I think if I was maybe, was already employed before, the 9 to 5, and they didn't see me a whole lot anyway, it would have been a little bit different. I can't speak for that, but I think I think coming from 100% of the time to like, whoa, where's mom again? So
yeah. So did it adjust now 6 years later?
It adjusted. Like I said, given the choice though, my kids would still rather have me home, obviously.
Right.
But my schedule is such that, I can work with it somewhat. Now, my situation is a little bit different because I'm a single parent, I have divorced since then. So I have somewhat of a shared custody with my ex-husband. So I work when my kids are not with me.
Got it.
So that when my kids are with me, I almost never have to work, or I work a turn, which is a turn just for, for people who are just listening, is, when you go out and come back on the same day. Say I leave in the morning, fly to Los Angeles, come back, and then I'm home in the afternoon. So it's like a regular job.
It's not a trip. You
It's
don't
not
stay
a
in a
trip.
hotel.
You don't stay in a hotel. You don't spend time overnight, anything like that. And so what I used to do for a long time is we had a trip, 4 a.m. Departure to Los Angeles, and then you fly back. And so I think you arrive to Seattle around 1 or 2 o'clock. Oh. And so I used to do those a lot. So when my kids were with me, that's what I would do, because then they could get themselves to school. We'd pack the lunches ahead of time. We would have breakfast items ready. So all of that would be good to go. And then, they would get themselves to school. But then by the time they're home from school, I'm already home.
So it sounds like when you describe the Los Angeles turns and you're home by noon, it sounds like you're describing what that senior flight attendant was telling you.
Yes.
How many years did it take you to get to the point where you could start doing that since the day you started?
Well, so that was 4 years, but I could probably do it even sooner, because it's only... it's funny because flight attendants, we all kind of divide in groups, because we all have similar lifestyles. There's a mom group. So the majority of people that fly those morning turns, they're parents. They're parents like me. They want to go, they want to fly their turn and come back and be home before their kids out of school.
Gotcha.
We have people that we call vampires. Those are the people that prefer the night turns. You know what I mean? I will never fly an all-nighter unless I absolutely have to, forced to, because I can't stay awake at night. I would rather get up at 2 a.m. in the morning, show up at 4, be all pretty with the makeup on and a cup of coffee and not stay up all night. So,
but then there's people who love that.
And then there are people who love that. Thank God, because, I'm like, I'm not flying that. That is the first line on my, when I bid my schedule, that is the very first line. No all-nighters.
So you're
whatever system, when I'm telling the computer system, our bidding system is whatever it is you want to give me. No all-nighters. That's the very first preference. No all-nighters for Mariya. So yes. So I could probably fly those even before then, but I didn't need to, you know what I mean? So I just make my schedule work with whatever stage of life I'm in, whatever stage of life my kids are in. So for example, my son plays soccer, so his games are on Saturdays. So I bid for Saturdays off. So I don't care if I get a Sunday off. You know what I mean? So I more often than not, I end up working Sundays because that's what system gives me, but it gives me Saturdays off. And that's what's important to me.
Got it.
So yes, with enough seniority, I think, 3-4 years into the job, you can make your schedule work with you. You're not going to get everything you want, and not all the time. And I mean, there are some months where it's kind of like, well, suck it up, buttercup. It's just not going to be, a fantastic month. But, overall, I would say like at my seniority, at 6 years seniority, that can be good.
Could be good. And we're talking about a time that Alaska just expanded insanely.
Yes. Well, and that's exactly it. That was one other thing is when I was hired, they told us, you guys are coming on at a good time because we're going to be hiring people beneath you. And so you're going to move up in seniority really, really quickly. And so that's exactly what happened. I wasn't reserved for a very long time. And like you said, everything moved up very, very quick.
Yeah.
So,
and I'd love to talk about all these things. So, before we get too far from getting on with Alaska, did you go through a period of thinking, what airline should I apply to, or Alaska was always it?
Alaska was always it because I didn't want to fly international because I didn't want to be gone that long, first of all. Second of all, I didn't want to mess up with the whole body clock, the whole, natural circadian rhythm and everything else. I just wanted to be close.
Got it.
And then, even though it wasn't a consideration at the time, but, now it's like, I don't want to be somewhere where I can't get home really, really quickly. You know what I mean? If God forbid something happened, I can be home very, very quickly because of where we fly. Whereas if I'm in Amsterdam, I'm not getting home another, 10, 12 hours possibly, right?
Got it.
Or longer.
So you knew you don't want to work international flights.
I knew that, yeah.
You wanted to be, and by close you mean we fly from Hawaii to the East Coast, so we're about
right. And we fly to Mexico, so we always, I mean, maybe 5 hours away, right? 6 hours away at the most, right? With the winds or something like that.
And you said you were living in Alaska at the time, so probably really Alaska Airlines was your only closest to home sort of airline.
Right, and that's exactly it. That's exactly that is the airline of the state. So
you didn't really have a thing. So you go through training, and then you graduate. There's a graduation ceremony, and then when do you become a real flight attendant? When? At what point? How far?
Well, I think it was a week after graduation. They gave us a week to get our stuff together. Oh, they told our whole class that we're all going to Los Angeles.
Oh,
and it's like, wow, what do you mean we're going to Los Angeles? I didn't sign up for that.
Okay.
Because because then you have this issue. You have to look for a crash pad. You have to look for a place to stay while you're there. So thank you. So crash pad is so say if I live in Anchorage, right? But I fly out of Los Angeles, means all of my trips begin and end in Los Angeles. Well, I need a place to sleep, because if I come back from my trip and I have 3 days off, but I can't fly out that night to go back home to Anchorage, I need a place to sleep. So that's what crash pad is. So crash pad is typically an apartment that you share with a bunch of people. You all pitch in, you pay just a little bit of money, and you come and go. It's like a revolving door. The nice thing about it, lots of beds, yes. And we were very lucky because during the training, we already knew, I think maybe like 4 weeks or 3 weeks into training, that we'll be going to Los Angeles. So we handpicked the women that we wanted to be with. Oh. So we had a really, really wonderful group of women. And I think there were 6 of us. And we actually rented, we took a room in a hotel. And
so you rented a room in a hotel?
Well, it was just a little bit shady, because technically you're not supposed to have that many people, but we justified it with we were never there at the same time, which we really never were. We weren't, because we couldn't find an apartment, because none of us had cars, so we needed to be close to the airport. The hotel has a shuttle, so you could hop on the shuttle, get to the
airport.
Get to the airport, right? So the hotel owned some apartments, and they told us, in like another month an apartment will open up. And they said, well, okay, but in the meantime, can we please, wink, wink, have this room? And they're like, well, how many of you guys are staying there? And we said, well, there's
only two
of us at a time, which is true.
That's true. Okay.
And so that's what it was. So it was a hotel room, and it was true. I mean, we were, because of how we were called out and everything else, we were never 6 of us at a time. And then we moved into this wonderful apartment right behind the hotel, and it was the same thing. And it was really nice because, you're away from home, you're lonely. So it was nice to come because there would be always somebody would be there. Chances are somebody is always there. And so it was nice to come home from a trip. So so how reserve works, just for people that are listening. So they give you a month schedule, and
when you say reserve, every flight attendant who starts out is on reserve.
Yes, is on reserve, which means you don't have a line. You don't have confirmed trips that you're flying. You don't know what it is you're flying. They're telling you will be flying up to 18 days a month, and these are the days that you're callable, which means that Monday through Wednesday this week we could call you anytime. You have 2 hours to get you booty to the airport and fly whatever trip we give you. So in those 3 days you can't go home because you have to be available. So
even if they don't call and fly you somewhere, you can't leave the area, because if they do call you, you have to be there within 2 hours.
Yes, you have to be there within 2 hours.
If you're 5 hours away, you won't be there within 2 hours.
Yep, exactly. Okay. You're going to be in trouble. And so so that's what we would do. We would stay in that crash pad for 3 days or however many days we're on call. And then, once you're released, you could call them, close to your release time and say, hey, am I released? And they say, yes, you're released. You're free to go. And then you can hop on the airplane and fly home. And that's what they did.
Gotcha.
So
you were a commuter.
A commuter, yes. And that makes it difficult because, from Los Angeles, you have to take 2 flights. It's Los Angeles to Seattle, Seattle to Anchorage.
Oh.
And, so there was always, it was always 2 flights. And when you're in reserve, you are, even though they say we're protected by our contract, we're not, how would you say that? We're not, we're not really under the protection of the flight attendant union. And so if we were to be late, if we were not to show up or something like that, I think,
So when you're on reserve or when you're on probation?
When you're on probation. So the first 6 months when you're hired, you're what's called on probation, which means that, anything that you do that is not, allowed, obviously, if you're late, if you're all of this. So all of these offenses accumulate against you and you could get hired very, very quickly. And even though...
You could get hired?
Fired
Okay.
Fired very, very quickly. And even though we were told that we are protected by the union, we are not yet, because we're technically not a full-fledged union dues paying flight attendant.
Got it.
And so therefore we don't have as much protection as a full-fledged flight attendant, or at least that's the understanding that you get when you are on probation. And so you make sure that you are on time every time. People are afraid to call sick. I mean, it's just the reality of it. They don't want to call sick because they don't want to get fired for not showing up to work, even though they might be truly sick.
So it's the first 6 months.
The first 6 months.
You got to be on top of your game.
You got to be on top of your game.
Okay.
You work when you're sick. I mean, it's just the way it is, because people are, like I said, afraid. And that is not to say that if you were to go to your supervisor and say, you know what, I got this horrible, horrible flu, I can't work. It doesn't mean that they will not be sympathetic and, and get you out of your trips and you wouldn't be in trouble. You truly wouldn't be. But you're just afraid. It's a human nature. You want this job. You just went through 5 weeks of training to get the job. You're on your way and you want to keep it. And so you will do everything possible to not jeopardize it. So going back to the commuting, if my schedule was such where I would be 3 days on call and only have 2 days to go home, our commuter policy is you have to give yourself 2 flights, Alaska flights, not Horizon, not Delta, not United. They don't count. It has to be 2 Alaska flights to get to work.
So you're on for 3 days. And then you have 2 days off, and you go home on the first day. You get home at night. You sleep at home that night. And now it's the day prior to going back on call.
Yep.
So you're saying, per the contract, if you want to be protected, you have to list and show up to at least 2 flights out prior to the time that you get on call in Los Angeles.
Exactly. So if I say to myself, there's this last flight out of town, I know I'm gonna make it. There's enough seats, I'm gonna make that flight, and I count on that flight, and then I have a mechanical. Then I'm going to be in trouble, because even though mechanicals are covered by contract, it was the only flight I left myself.
And it wasn't 2 flights.
And it wasn't 2 flights. Yeah, if it was 2 flights, then, mechanical or anything like that goes wrong with that airplane, that's not my fault. I did my due diligence. I gave myself 2 flights to get to work. Then I'm protected by the contract, So needless to say that when I would only have a couple of days off, I wouldn't go home. I was too scared, because it was 2 flights there, 2 flights back. And sometimes, honestly, because you work so much on your days on, and on Los Angeles, typically, almost always, what I would fly, a position, Puerto Vallarta turns, early Puerto Vallarta turns. You go to Puerto Vallarta and come back, Puerto Vallarta and come back. And so you sleep in Los Angeles every time, but then next morning, you're up again at 4 o'clock to be, I can't remember, 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock report. And so you're flying, so you're tired. Then you're taking 2 flights home, so you're extremely tired. You sleep.
Half of the time you have 2 days off, so you didn't even go home.
And you don't even go home.
So listening to this life of yours, when you first start flying, how are your kids doing at home? Like, how are they dealing with this?
It was tough for them. I mean, I will be completely honest, and that's why when I say, if I were to go back in time, if I knew how hard it would have been on them, I would not have done it at that point of my life, because I would have waited for them to be a little bit older. But even now, like I said, now they're older, but they would rather have mom at home. But that could be just my kids too, because somebody else's child might say, it's fine. Like my daughter right now, she's 16. She's fine with me being gone, So she loves me, she misses me, but it's kind of like, okay, mom, see you in 3 days, no problem. Whereas,
so she was 12 when you started.
Yes.
Still an adjustment.
Yeah. So for her, it was an adjustment. It was especially an adjustment. So she was 12. My other boy was 8 and another one was 7. And so, like for my youngest one, especially, it was very, very tough, because he went from having his mom home all the time to not having mom.
So you would say, before we get too far off this, if there's a mom out there with little children at home, you're saying it would be better for her and for her children for her to wait until they're grown?
I would say so, because if I were to go back in time, and I didn't need to work at the time, so it wasn't an income issue. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I understand people have to work. So if I was a single mother and I needed to work, that would have been different. But given a choice, knowing that, you know, I don't need the income, you know, I would have waited, you know, because the time with your kids, you don't get back. You know, I mean, it truly is. I mean, it sounds cliche and sounds corny, but it truly is. It truly is that. You know, I lost the 5 weeks, you know, when I was in training.
Right.
And then it was the 3 months that I lived in Los Angeles. It was, you know, half and half-ish, or maybe, you know, I would be in Los Angeles more than I would be at home. After that, things have settled down, you know what I mean? But, and now they're great because I'm home a lot. And also what makes it not great, but what makes it work is that, like I said, because it's a shared custody situation, if my kids are not with me and they're with their dad and I'm working, when they don't care where I'm at, you know, if they're not at home, what do they care? And that's what I told them. I said, I could get an office job, but really, if you're not with me and you're with your dad at the time, what do you care if I work in an office down the street or if I'm gone for 4 days? What difference does it make?
Right.
You know, you are not here.
So since then, you've gone from working the early turns and home by noon to be with them to only working when they're at their dad's.
No, I still do turns when, you know, just because of the income of how much I need to make. So I work trips when they're at their dad's. So say, for example, so the way it works is I get my schedule and then, you know, and then they will be with their dad on my trip days. So if I have a 3-day trip, they will be with their dad for 3 days. And then they will be with me when I have my days off. But on my days off, what I would do is I would pick up a turn maybe, right? Because if they're in school, I might as well just go and make some money.
Got it.
You know, and then when they come back, then I'm home.
Got it. So it is one of those, it sounds like it's one of those jobs where the more you work, the more money you make, and you could really fit the work into any way you'd like.
You could to an extent. I mean, I couldn't, you know, I don't, like I said, I don't have an ideal schedule. And every month it's different, but you do what you can. And when you cannot, you know, there would be times, I think I'm going to miss, my son's last, like if he has a soccer game on the last Saturday of September, I'm gonna miss it because I'm working. But I have the other 3. And so you just make it work. You know, when I was talking to somebody, I said, you know what? And when you know you're going to miss the game, you just come to a practice. You know, that's what I do with my son. So, if I know I'm going to miss the game, I won't come to every practice he has. I won't come to all 3 that he has that week, but I will come maybe to one of them and just watch him. And that way he knows, hey, you know, mom saw me, you know, it was cool. Well, and now with the technology too, you know, you could FaceTime, you know, like I've done it where my daughter would FaceTime me, you know, she would, you know, and then you watch him. I mean, it's fuzzish and stuff like that, but still the ability is there. Also, you know, going back to being a mom and everything else, I used to bring books on my layovers. And so I would FaceTime with my kids and read with them at night. And so that helped them because that was something that we always did when they were little.
Wow.
Is that we would read at night. And like I said, FaceTime, it's fantastic. You know, I'd bring the books, we would sit, you know, I would sit down and have the book on my lap and they would sit wherever they're sitting on their bed and I would turn the pages, have the camera turned and there's my voice and there's the pages and there's the, you know,
wow.
and there's everything, technology. And I mean, fantastic. I used to go, I loved Oakland layovers at Emeryville. So, and there's this humongous bookstore there, Barnes and Nobles. And I would go to the kids section there. And there's all these amazing new books that our library hasn't even gotten yet, obviously, because they've just been published. And I would just sit in the corner with a pile of books and read. You know, my boys just absolutely loved that.
Wow.
You know,
so that was something you wouldn't be able to do if not for the layover.
Right.
So you kind of made it work.
Right. You just make it work. You know, I mean, you just make it work. I used to do lunches with my kids, you know, when I'm at home and, you know, I'd just been gone for 3 days, I would show up for lunches because when you're in elementary school, you can come and have lunch with your kids. I'd do lunch and I would do recess. You know, I would not volunteer in school because, I'm not really a children person. Okay. So
okay.
I am my children person because my kids listen, but I couldn't deal with 30 kids who don't listen. You know what I mean? I mean, that's why I'm not a teacher. You know, I could never be a teacher because I was like, and like I told my kids, I said, if I had to homeschool you, somebody would not make it because that's not one of the gifts that I have. You know, God did not give me that gift. So, but I could go and I could, you know, I remember my son was into baseball at the time, but throw baseball during the recess. And that way they're like, oh, you know, mom's here, you know, that was fun. Huh. So did that and did practices. What else did we do? Well, it just like when you on your days off, you're off, you know, like
so how much did you feel that, how much of an extra effort did you feel you had to and did make during your time at home because you weren't at home so much?
I think probably 10 times than what I did when I was a stay-at-home mom. And I think a lot of
it... Do
it...
you think that's crucial?
I think it depends on personality, because the thing is, because I had so much guilt over being gone that I tried to make it up, but I also have to be conscientious of not spoiling them. So it's not that I'm gonna come back and bring him tons of chocolates and things like that, but I wanted to give back in time as much as I could. And so, you want to go to the park, sure. You want to do this, sure. You want to do that, sure. You know what I mean? So I think it is crucial because, I believe in love bucket. You know what the love bucket is?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So every person has a love bucket, so, whatever your love language is, whether it's be service or conversation or touch or whatever,
Mine is conversation.
Okay. So there we go.
Conversation.
So I have to fill your love bucket as, either as your friend or as your spouse or as a child or as a parent, right? So, because for my kids, the love buckets is, it's touch and spending time together. So I try to fill those love buckets when I'm home as much as I can so that they have something to draw from when I'm gone.
Got it.
And then keep in touch as much as possible when I'm gone. Even though, maybe it's just my kids, but when I'm gone, they don't really hang out on the phone with me a whole lot. It's kind of like, how was your day? It was fine, this and that and the other thing. And then they're done. They're like, okay, mom, love you, when they're coming home. That's it.
Gotcha.
But, but when we're home, that's when they open up and they can, we converse and do all of that.
Interesting that you said you don't want to spoil them, because if I were you, without speaking with you about it, I don't have kids, but if I did, I would probably spoil them. And I like the fact that there is a balance, and anyone would have to find that, because I would think it would be easy to go overboard during the time at home just because that guilt of I wasn't home for half the month or whatever. So there sounds like a balance. So you've been doing this for 6 years. Did you find balance in your life since you started?
I think now I have balance.
It took me 3 years, so I'm asking if you have, and how long did it take you?
Well, my situation is different just because I did go through divorce and everything else. Say if all things stayed equal, say I was in a marriage and and the job went on and everything else, I think it would be wonderful probably once I get off the reserve. Because the nice thing about it is that, so for example, for moms out there who are considering this, right? You're married, you have your kids, you have your husband, you have this job. Potentially, you could fly very, very little because you could give away your trips and be at home a lot. You know what I mean? So you fly this job.
Once you're off reserve.
Right. Once you're off reserve. So potentially you're flying, you several trips a month, as much as you couldn't drop, because people pick up trips. If I don't want a trip and I put it on a bulletin board and you want to fly my trip, you pick it up. So everybody's happy, company is covered and, and I have the time off that I want. So I think once you're off reserve and then, it's easy to find that balance. I think it becomes much, much easier. You just find what works for you.
Interesting. And it sounds like there's many ways to juggle
There are many ways to juggle this job. I flew with the flight attendants who have little children and husband works 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. So she stays home Monday through Friday. And then she flies on weekends. She either flies turns or, she flies a trip. I mean, I don't know how difficult it is in a marriage, because then it seems to me like you pass like ships in the night, but they must make it work, right? Or like I said, if she's flying turns, then she's home at night.
Maybe for them, not seeing each other is what keeps the marriage strong.
Well, and sometimes that's what it takes. You never know.
Okay, so you said your entire class went to Los Angeles. How does that work? What could one expect in terms of if someone lives anywhere in Seattle or wherever, and they don't know, as airlines have different bases. With Alaska, it's Anchorage, Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, and San Diego for now. We'll get San Francisco in a little bit. How does that work? How is it determined where you'll end up? Because you were living in Alaska and you went to Los Angeles. Is there a way to know when you apply where you'll end
No.
up? How does that work?
So it depends on companies' needs. So basically, if they know they're gonna need the next number of flight attendants at this base, that's where that class is gonna go. Now, that is not to say that that won't change over time, because that's what happened in Los Angeles. So we got assigned Los Angeles, but what they tell you is they say, every month we open up spaces here and here in bases. So what you can do is you can put it in the system. It's called master bid sheet. And you say, I want my domicile or my fly in and fly out airport to be Anchorage. And so that's what I did. I was in Los Angeles, but I told the system, as soon as the spot in Anchorage opens up, I want that spot. And then the computer system goes in the seniority. So if the flight attendant senior to me wants that spot and there's only one spot open, she'll get it. And maybe I'll get it next month. So, but basically as the numbers, as the needs of the company shifts through the system, the spaces open up. Another thing you can do, and that's what I did, and I got really, really lucky. You can do what's called base trade. So, for example, if you live in Los Angeles, say you live in Anchorage, right? But you want to fly out of Los Angeles, and I'm flying out of Los Angeles, but I want to be in Anchorage because my family is there. Because that's what happened to me. There was a girl in Anchorage who was, so. Later on, when I traded bases and actually moved to Seattle, and I was still Anchorage based, just for the listeners, because I think it's a little bit confusing. So I eventually got Anchorage base. I put a master bid sheet, and then when the space opened up, the system gave it to me. They said, there we go.
So you finished class, you went to Los Angeles, and then you put in the bid saying whenever Anchorage opens up, because there was no need to send you there when you graduated.
Yep.
So you went to Los Angeles, and he said, whenever there's a need for me in Anchorage, send me there. So I could be home.
Yes, and it took 3 months.
3 months.
3 months.
So you lived in that hotel room for 3 months.
The apartment. We were in the hotel room for a little bit, and then we got an apartment.
Okay, and then you get Anchorage, and then what happens?
And then I got Anchorage, and then my family and I moved to Seattle because I love Seattle, Pacific Northwest. But by that time, I'm Anchorage based, right? So I still had to commute to Anchorage to fly my trips.
Although you moved to Seattle.
Even though I moved to Seattle, because it doesn't matter, that's your base. It doesn't matter where you live. That's you.
Now, real quick, what does a base mean?
Base, it's that's where all of our trips begin and end.
Gotcha.
So, so different companies have different bases. Like you said, Alaska has Seattle, Portland,
Anchorage, LA, and San Diego.
LA and San Diego. So that's where all of our trips will begin and end. So if you live at that base, then you don't have to commute. You drive to work. You live in Anchorage, you drive 15, 20 minutes, however long to the airport, you park your car, you fly your trip, come back, drive back home. But if you don't live in Anchorage, if you live in Seattle, but your Anchorage base, they said, this is the base, this is where you begin your trip, this is where you end your trip. You take a flight from Seattle to Anchorage, make sure you're on time, give yourself those 2 flights, and then, and then you get ready for your trip. But that's where I was going with the base swap is, moved to Seattle, but was still Anchorage based. But I wanted to fly out of Seattle at that time because I don't want to commute. To me, commute is a waste of time.
Right.
It is. It's a huge waste of time, and you're tired all the time. Because if you're not working on an airplane, you're commuting on an airplane.
And you're not getting paid.
And you're not getting paid for commuting. No, it's all on your time. So if you have 3 days off and you just spend the day commuting, well, too bad.
So what commuting really means is just like anyone out there, for example, would take a bus to work.
You
take a plane to work.
We take a plane
That's
to work.
all commuting means.
Yep, that's all it means.
Okay.
But it just, it takes a lot of your time depending on where you live. I mean, between Seattle and Anchorage, that's 3 hours. That's 3 hours just flight time, not counting the time it takes you to get to the airport and to get back from the airport and all of that, and the time you give yourself to get through security, so all of those nuances. So I did what's called a base swap. So I was living in Seattle, was flying out of Anchorage, but wanted to fly out of Seattle. There was a girl who lived in Seattle but wanted to fly out of Anchorage because she met a boy, fell in love with a boy, wanted to be close to him. So she and I did it's called the base swap, body for a body. We told the system, we informed the crew scheduling, it's a paperwork that you do, that, for the next 3 months, she's going to fly out of Anchorage and I will fly out of Seattle. And that's just a mutual agreement. So that could be discontinued by either flight attendant at any time. You just have to inform the crew scheduling. I mean, you cannot do it in the middle of the month. It has to be in the beginning of the month, obviously. So you have to finish flying your schedule. So, And so that was fantastic. So I only commuted to Anchorage, I want to say maybe three months or so. And then she and I went on the base swap. So even though technically I was Anchorage based, I flew all of my trips out of Seattle. And by that time...
Well, she was flying her trips out of Anchorage.
Yes, exactly.
So she was filling your spot there and you were filling her spot here.
Exactly.
So basically the difference between a base swap and a base trade is when you base trade, it's according to the company's needs and it's permanent.
Yes.
When it's a base swap, it's just two flight attendants exchanging spots, and it lasts for 3 months.
It's typically it's done for 3 months, but it could be 6 months. You know, she and I did it for almost a year, I think.
And do you have to renew it every 3 months, or is it?
I believe so. I think every 3 months we had to put in the paper.
But you could just keep going as long as you
as long as we want to. Yeah.
You're both willing to do that.
Yep.
So if someone out there's listening and they live in Seattle and they get on and say the company needs to put them all hypothetically in San Diego.
Yep.
Even if the company's needs for Seattle, it won't open for 2 years. If they find someone in Seattle who'd switch with them a month in, they could do it.
They could do it.
So there's an out. All they need to do is kind of find someone.
They have to find someone, yeah. So and we had a website for that. It's called Base Trades and whatever. So you could post it and you could say, hey, I want to trade, bases for the next 3 months, contact me. So, it's doable. It's not a guarantee. So if you're looking for a guarantee, there's no guarantee, but it's doable.
Gotcha. So now you're back in Seattle, you live here, and then at one point did you transfer here permanently and the swaps?
Sometime during that swap time, because once I moved to Seattle, I put the master bid sheet through the system again, saying, give me Seattle when it becomes available.
Whenever there's a need.
There's a need, when the spots in Seattle open, the company opens the spots, I want to be, take me. So, and that's what the system did about a year in, I think I was based in Anchorage for a year, even though I didn't fly out of Anchorage.
So you did swap with the same girl?
Same girl, swap. And then once the system opened up, and it actually worked out pretty well because she was kind of done swapping at that time. And then
she was like, I'm not swapping.
Yeah, she was done swapping, and the system gave me Seattle anyway, so it was perfect.
That's awesome. Cool. So at that point, how long have you been with the company?
Oh gosh, that would have been 3 years-ish.
So you're holding a line, you're not on reserve. Okay, and the company's hiring and you're getting seniority. So at that point, are you still doing the turns or the trips when your kids are gone?
I do the trips because the thing is, even though we have a trade-in system, so the way that works is, on the 5th of every month, the system opens up for bidding, which means that I can tell the computer what it is I want to fly and what I don't want to fly. So for example, I say no all-nighters. That's my first preference. No all-nighters. Don't give me all-nighters. Another thing is, because I did a lot of what we call milk run in Anchorage, which is a lot of tiny villages. You do a lot of up and down. So you fly, you land, and you depart a lot of times throughout the day. Because I did so much of it, I don't want to fly it anymore. So I ask for no trips like that. So that's my second on the line. And then I do because the way they teach us to work with that system is list what's most important to you at the top, because it works almost like a sieve. If you can imagine like a couple of layers of sieves, and the water goes through. And so, it will go through this sieve and, leave some debris here, go through this sieve and leave a little bit debris here, and just keeps going. So what's most important to you, leave it at the very top, because that's what the system will try to give you first.
And every single month, all flight attendants
do that.
Tell the system what they want their schedule to look like.
Yes.
And you say, you list the most important things first.
Yes.
And you go down from there.
Yes.
Now, how specific could a flight attendant get when bidding for their schedule?
They could be very, very specific. There's some flight attendants, we call what's called bid packets. It's like really thick book, and it lists every single trip that will be done from this airport, say from Seattle, for the next month. It gives you layovers, it gives you position, it gives you when you leave, when you come back, all of that. So some flight attendants are so savvy in that they will go and they will bid for specific trips. So they say, I want a Hawaiian trip. I want a trip to Honolulu that leaves on the 13th, comes back on the 15th. This is the trip. And it leaves on the 13th at 7 a.m., comes back on the 15th at 8 p.m. Because this is the trip, so that's what I want. Give that to me. And the higher in seniority you are, the more likely you are to get what you want. So the top people at the top, the ones that were hired, 30, 35 years ago, they will get what they want, pretty much. The rest of us, because like I said, it's, we're 6,000 strong. So that sieve just keeps, it will give top people what they want and then just keeps going down, so the people at the bottom are probably not going to get what they want. Let's be honest.
So everything's seniority.
Yes, everything is seniority.
How long have you been around?
How long have you been around?
So if, for example, I've been around for 4 years and you've been around for 2 years and we both ask for the same trip, I'll get it and you won't because I come ahead of you.
Yes.
But if you ask for a trip and I ask for a different trip, and even if your trip is better, since I didn't ask for it and it's not in my parameters, you could get it.
I could get it.
Then I get what I asked for. So it all goes based off seniority, and then the system distributes everything.
Yes, according to your desires. Because the thing is, if you're not very specific, like say you're very senior, but you said I just want the first week off in the month and that's all I want. And I say, well, I want to fly to Puerto Vallarta all month long. And even though it could be a very, very senior trip, because you didn't ask for it, the system is like, oh, okay, it looks like I could give it to Mariya, so it will give it to Mariya, and you'll get your week off.
Interesting.
So
interesting. And it sounds like you really don't know what different senior people might want, because a trip you would consider to be bad, the senior person might have a grandchild in that city, and they're bidding it to see
and
them.
That's exactly it. So they always say, ask for the moon, ask away. So, I keep mine, but they also say the simpler you keep it, the more likely you are to get what you want, because then the system is not checking through all these different parameters trying to give you what you want, because it really tries to give you what you want. So I keep mine very simple. No all-nighters, no milk runs, and then I ask for the days off, and then I leave it alone, because I know that I probably can't get a week off at a time. I know that I can't get 2 weeks at a time. I know that I can't get the whole weekend off, so I don't even ask. I mean, why would I even bother asking?
So it's ask for the moon, but at the same time, no.
Yeah, be realistic. I mean, just know that you're not going to get 3 weeks off and then fly, one week nonstop. Just know that.
Got it. So we're talking about bidding, and then the system distributes it based off seniority. Well, let's talk about after the fact. So everyone get their schedule, and some got what they wanted, some didn't. Are there options to move things around and change it, or are you stuck with what you get?
Okay, so in our company, the system that we have now is called Jeppesen.
Okay.
And it was created by Jeppesen, so I can't even remember what it's called exactly. But so it's a computer program. So on the 5th we bid, we get our schedules later on in the month, and then on the 15th, all of us flight attendants can post the trips we don't want. So it's almost like an electronic bulletin board, and I say, I will trade this trip for this trip. Or I say, I don't want this trip at all. Somebody take it. You know what I mean? Like I could post the trip and I say, somebody please take it. Sometimes if I'm really, really desperate, I have a graduation to go to, or, bar mitzvah or whatever, I could put money on it. I will say, whoever picks up my trip, I'll give you $50 on top of that.
Oh.
So I could, sometimes when people, especially like around Christmas, when people get really, really desperate to get that Christmas off, you can see a lot of money on some of those trips, So not only are you getting paid by the company to fly that trip, but somebody could also pay you potentially $200-$300 to fly their trip, because they want to get rid of it, and they don't want to, they don't want to try to call in sick for it or anything like that, to try to manipulate the system that way.
Interesting. So I'm not all that familiar with 9 to 5 jobs in the sense of getting rid of shifts. But with flight attendants, or at least at Alaska, it sounds like there's many different ways there's a bulletin board online and you could post your trips. In fact, if you're desperate, you could even write an offer, I'll pay you $50 if you take it. Right. And then they work it, you pay them the $50, and then you have those days off.
Yes.
So it sounds like there's a lot of flexibility and ways out if you have to.
Yes, they are. And now that is not to say that you will be able to get rid of those trips. I mean, sometimes when it's a wonderful weekend in Seattle, when whatever it's called, when
the sun is out.
When the sun is out or whatever, you're probably not going to be able to get rid of them. So, but the potential is there. There's ways for you to do it. So that happens on the 15th. Then on the 16th, we have what's called open time, which means that the system will allow you potentially to drop a trip. So, maybe there's a trip I really don't want to fly. So if the system allows me, I could select this trip and I could tell the system, take it. Please take it. Take it off my line. Take it off my schedule altogether. Now, it might or might not work. It depends because this, it's a huge computer system. It thinks for all, 6,000 of us, right? So it happens in split seconds. I mean, it's like I said, it's like a mega computer. So it already knows if I want to drop this trip, it already is calculating how many of us are trying to drop it on the same day. And it's telling itself, okay, I'm going to have like 200 trips on this day that I'm going to need flight attendants for. No, I'm not going to let you guys all just dump it. You know what I mean? And so it will allow some dump and some, there is a limit. So because then potentially everybody could come and say, yeah, I really don't like my schedule. Just take all of it. You know what I mean? So, and then once that is done, say you try to trade with the system or give it back to the system, and then the system closes up. It says, okay, no more. You're done for now. Just, you're done. So then what you could potentially do is you could trade with the system trip for trip. So, say I have a 4-day trip that I don't particularly like. And the system has on its bulletin board, so not with another flight attendant, but the system itself, the company says there is this 4-day trip that we need covered. And maybe that trip has a wonderful layover. It has a Hawaii, mine doesn't. And I will be like, okay, it's winter in Seattle. I want to fly to Hawaii. So I will trade my 4 days for those 4 days, but it has to be day for day. So if it's Monday through Thursday, it has to be Monday through Thursday. It can't be Tuesday through Friday because the company needs those days covered. It has to be trip for a trip. Back in the day with the older system, we were able to take 2 turns, like 2 one-day trips and trade them for a 2-day trip. And that was wonderful, but we can't do that anymore. It might maybe come back because I know a lot of people want it. I would like to do, or maybe I could take a 4-day trip and I'm a mom, right? I want to be home at night. So I could tell the system, okay, take my 4-day trip, but I'll fly 4 turns for you, which means I'll still fly 4 days, but I won't
sleep at home.
Sleep at home every night. But we don't have that ability at the moment. I think they're maybe trying to fix it. I'm not sure. I don't keep up with that, to be honest with you. But the potential is there if there's coverage, because the company is all about coverage. Somebody needs to fly those airplanes. We need to be on time every time for the customer, to be reliable, all of that. So we can't just, dump things into the, into the bulletin board. But the opportunity is there.
Got it. So before we get too far away from reserve versus holding a line, as a line holder, where would reserve flight attendants kick in within the operation? Why do reserve flight attendants exist?
Okay.
When would they be used and how?
So they exist to cover the gaps. So for example, I get up in the morning and I'm feeling sick and I have to fly my trip in a couple of hours, but I get up, I'm throwing up, I can't work. So I call crew schedule and I'm saying, I'm sick, I can't fly. And so now they have to find a flight attendant to fly a 4-day trip. And so they look, on their schedule and they say, oh, Yoel is good for 4 days. Yoel has a 4-day block that he is good for. Okay. So they're calling Yoel and they say, hey, Yoel, you have a couple of hours. Typically they give you more time than that. And that's where the flight attendant courtesy comes into. So for example, if I'm kind of feeling ickish in the evening and I think I'm probably not going to fly my trip in the morning, it's only, it's a courtesy to just call crew schedule and say, you know what, I'm feeling sick. I'm feeling something coming on. I'm probably not going to make that trip tomorrow morning. So that way they can look at their schedule and they can say, oh, okay, Yoel is good to go for the next 4 days. So they will probably give you a call right away.
So you're saying if you're the flight attendant calling out sick, the sooner you do that, the sooner the reserve flight attendant will get the notification and be able to plan for it. Okay.
Most likely, yes. That's how it works, and that's only courteous because who wants to receive a call 2 hours prior to the because the minimum that they have to give you is 2 hours. But say it's rush hour traffic. Say the trip is begins at 9 o'clock in Seattle, right? And you live an hour and a half away. Right. So it's it's only courteous of me to call the crew scheduling, to let them know, and then I'll call you that evening and say, hey, Yoel, you're working tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And that way you need to get up early versus getting a phone call, at 7 a.m. when I just called and oh my gosh, I got to get my stuff.
Because legally they could call the reserve flight attendant up to 2 hours prior to when the flight leaves.
Yes.
They could give you
they could
2
give you 2
hours.
hours, yeah.
Gotcha. So the sooner you do that, the sooner they have or able to reach out to
find a replacement. And then we also have what's called Oh my gosh, when you sit at the airport, I'm trying to remember. Airport standby. So for example, if I'm on reserve, then the company could say, you know what, we don't have any trips for you yet, but we need you to come and be at the airport for the next 5 hours. And that way, if the airplane, if somebody gets sick at the airplane, like say you came on the airplane, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm sick, I can't fly, then I'm already at the airport. We're not taking any delays. I'm sitting at the airport in the office. They call me, I walk down there and they take your spot and you go home. So all of that is done just so as to run the company on time.
So basically it sounds like the last thing they want to do and will do is cancel a flight because there's a shortage of a flight attendant. So they're always prepared that if a flight attendant who was supposed to work a trip for some reason isn't or can't, there's someone to come right in.
And I don't think I've ever heard of a flight being canceled because a flight attendant was sick or didn't show up or something like that, because they always have replacement. The only exception to that rule would be if you're on a layover somewhere where it's not our base. Say you came to Puerto Vallarta, right? And you ate some bad shrimp. It's time to go home and you're throwing up. You're like, oh my gosh, I cannot work. I literally can't keep anything down. So when you call the company, well, they don't have anybody sitting in Puerto Vallarta waiting to take your place. So what they could do is they could delay the flight and fly a flight attendant to take your place. And then,
fly them into Puerto Vallarta and fly them back out.
Yes, exactly. So they will fly to Puerto Vallarta. They will work that flight that you were supposed to be working. So the flight will be delayed, but it will still get home.
Interesting.
And you will be on board that airplane potentially just a passenger because you're sick. Or if you're really, really sick and you can't fly at all, then you will stay in a hotel room until such a time that you're ready to fly back home.
Interesting. So it sounds like, for someone watching out there, it sounds like, based off what we're talking, there has to be a certain number of flight attendants on a flight.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm sure people are asking, if one's sick, why can't you leave with the rest of them?
Right.
How does that work? Is there a minimum number? And
yes.
How does all that work?
So we have what's called minimum rule, a minimum crew, and I'm sure it has to do with the FAA regulations. I think it has to do with the number of doors and how many exits we need to open in case of an emergency. So on majority of our airplanes, we have some airplanes where you only have to have 3 flight attendants, but the majority of our airplanes you must have 4. You cannot have less than 4. So you cannot, if the 4th one doesn't show up or is late or whatever, we can't even board. So for example, if and there were cases like that where, well, speaking of flight attendants that are at the airport standby, right? Well, not standby. What's the word again?
Airport standby.
Airport standby.
Reserve.
Yes, reserve. So, for example, the 3 of us flight attendants got on an airplane, but the 4th one is running late. She calls crew schedule and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm stuck in traffic. I will make it, but I'm 20 minutes late." So the crew scheduler says, okay, no problem, just come. And then they call the person who is sitting in the airport, flight attendant who is sitting in airport standby. She comes on the airplane to help us board because we have to have 4, minimum crew is 4, so 4 people to start boarding the plane. That way the plane is not delayed, customers are not waiting, so they're hopping on the airplane. And in the meantime, she drives herself to the airport, checks herself in, and then she comes on and she replaces the flight attendant that was boarding the flight for her. So she gets penalized for being late, but nobody's taking any delays, and the customers don't know any different. They're like, okay, we boarded on time, we departed on time, everything is good.
So it sounds like there's always a requirement of a number of flight attendants, but who they are it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter as long as they're a flight attendant.
It could be a reserve, it could be a line holder, it could be
even our supervisor qualified to fly the line.
Oh.
So when the push really, really comes to shove, the supervisor could, grab all of their required items, which is, their passport and their FAA card and all of those things, and they could come to the airplane and fly the flight if needs be. So if it really comes to it and they have no reserve flight attendant, no flight attendants sitting, airport standby, we've had supervisors come down, hop board the plane, and then when the flight attendant shows up, they just replace the supervisor.
Isn't it amazing? And all these things happen behind the scenes. And we're just talking about the flight attendant side of things. All these things happen behind the scene, and just so passengers could just travel smoothly throughout their day.
And that's exactly
and no one would ever notice or no passengers would know who was originally scheduled on a flight. It's just they have 4 flight attendants.
Yep, they have 4 flight attendants.
And there's all this behind the scenes.
And it's really funny because, when we talk about the minimum crew, oftentimes, especially in the evenings, those late flights, and especially with little kids, the families would be gathering them, and we would be waiting, for the people to deplane, and they would feel bad because, it takes them forever to gather all their stuff and their children, and, children are sleeping, they're trying not to wake them up, and they're like, oh, you guys just go ahead and get off the plane. And we're like, well, we really can't.
So you have to be there.
We have to be there. As long as there's passengers on board, we have to be there.
So the flight attendants are the first on
and last ones off. Yep, exactly.
On every single flight.
Every single flight.
And it's not just one or two, it's all four or three or whatever the minimum crew is.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're at the airport. Let's talk about how does the customer service agent know that Mariya is supposed to show up, and how does that work? You show up to the airport. How do you know where your plane's at? What could someone expect as far as?
Well, we were given this wonderful mobile devices, our phones, right? And Alaska created tons of really useful apps for us. So one of them is called Block to Block. So it tells me when I push on that app, it tells me who my crew is. It tells me where I'm flying, like say I'm flying from here to Baltimore, tells me my gate, tells me who my crew is, tells me the number of the passengers. I can look up every passenger by name, tells me what meals the passengers could possibly want if that's what they put in. So all of that information is there. There's tons and tons of information. Also, if we're delayed, the device will tell me, when I look at that app. And then, so I get to the gate, and the CSAs on their side, the customer service agents, they have their own iPad, and it tells them who the crew is. So I show my badge, and they check you in. So that way it tells, and it's connected to the crew scheduling, telling them that, okay, everybody is there, because as the time goes on, and say 3 flight attendants showed up and the third one didn't, so something is going to start blinking in crew scheduling, and they will call that flight attendant, and they would be like, where are you? You're not checked in, you're not there. And so, because that tells them they need to be quickly mobilized and then finding somebody else.
Maybe pull a reserve.
Pull a reserve or something.
How soon prior to departure do you have to be on the plane?
Okay, so per our contract, we have to be 40 minutes. 45 minutes
45
at the gate.
minutes.
45 minutes at the gate, 40 minutes before they start boarding. So if the plane leaves at 10 o'clock, I have to be standing by the airplane at 9:15. At 9:15, I show my badge to the CSA, and then, I get on the airplane, I check all the emergency equipment or whatever's consistent with my duties, and then they're ready to board.
Gotcha. So with the emergency equipment, every flight attendant has like a section that they check to make sure?
Yes, we have our area of responsibility, it's called. So we check our emergency equipment, we check that everything's good, everything's clean, and then we tell CSAs that we're good to board.
You're ready to board. So talking about emergency equipment, I know there's oxygen bottles and things like that. And some people, as flight attendants, we could go for months and not have a medical situation happen. And then it feels like you could go 2 weeks and you had 3.
Right.
So, but I'm sure maybe some people watching have had a situation on a plane once flying where maybe medical assistant was paged and something happened. And they might be thinking, I don't know anything about medical, and I've never CPR and first aid. How medically inclined does a flight attendant have to be to be good at this job?
Well, we're all trained in CPR.
Okay.
And beyond that, you don't have to have any medical education or anything like that, because what happens is if we have medical in flight, the first thing we always do is we page for medical assistance. We always say, is there anybody, is there a nurse or a doctor on board? Because that would be our first to go-to person. And say, if there is somebody, we ask what their specialty is, then we tell, okay, this passenger fainted, and so if that passenger, the medical personnel, whoever they are, EMT, doctor or whatever, if they're able to help us, they could tell us, what is happening and what we could be doing. But we also, simultaneously, while all of that is happening, we also inform the pilots. And what the pilots do is they call, we have the service that the company is paying for. It's called MedLink. And MedLink is, it's a phone service to the doctors on the ground. And so we connect our headset and the pilots patch you through, and you talk to a medical doctor that is hired by, or paid for, paid for by Alaska Airlines.
So while the medical situation is happening, you're talking live with
you're
the
talking
doctor.
live with the doctor, and I'm telling them, okay, this passenger fainted. He's traveling alone. I don't see any medical information on him. What should I do? And because we have, we also have a medical kit on the airplane, and so and the doctors are familiar with what we have in that medical kit. They know exactly what we have, and so under the direction of the doctor, we could administer something to that passenger.
Interesting.
So
it sounds like you're never alone in those situations.
No, you're never alone in that situation.
You paid for medical assistance, and there's always someone on
There's
there.
always someone, thank goodness. And when I tell you what, as a flight attendant, when we pay for medical assistance and we say, push your flight attendant call button, and when those buttons start lighting up, we're like, thank God. And they're like, okay, over here, right here. And it's funny because sometimes, you would have a chiropractor, and you have a foot doctor, and you have, and they have a surgeon, and we're like, okay, well, we have an emergency room doctor is always the favorites, because they deal with so much stuff, across the board. I'm like, oh, thank goodness for emergency room doctor.
So if anything, you'll have to turn people down because you have so many people offering to help. Yes,
sometimes we do. Yes, and they're always so kind and always so ready to help. I mean, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when it comes to I'm sure every 99% of people watching this have flown before, and they know there's 3 or 4 flight attendants on the plane, and everyone are doing something else. So there's one working maybe in first class and a few working in the back. How does all that work? Does each flight attendant have a job description on a specific flight? Yep. How does all that work? And if you like working in the back versus the front, do you have control over it?
You have a little bit of a control. So if you have 4 flight attendants, it's A, B, C, and D.
Okay.
So the A always works for first class. That's her area of responsibility. So, she will always work for first class, and then she will hop in the back cabin if she is able. So if she has the time, she'll go through, pick up the trash, things like that. And then you have the B and the C, who will always work the back. The B is the one that serves the food, and the C and the D from the front, they will be helping, doing the drinks. So yes, everybody has their job to do. And if you like a certain position, you could, when you were bidding for the strips, you could tell the system, I want the strips, but only if I work A. I want the strips, but only if I work B. Or give me anything. Do not give me A.
Got it. So there's different positions do different jobs or tasks on the plane.
Yes.
And back every month when you ask the system or tell the system what you want, you don't only talk about the trips. You actually could talk about the positions on the plane.
You could, yes.
Interesting. So every trip has 4 positions within it.
Yes.
Assuming the minimum crew on those planes are 4 people. So if there's 4 people along the same seniority who don't care about the position but like the trip, you could still get it because there's 4 on each thing. So let's shift gears and talk about pay, because I know it's a little different than most other jobs. We don't have to talk about specific numbers, but just the concept. I know it goes back to contracts, and that's what it goes off of. How does the contract thing works? And you were talking about union and being protected. Every few years, the flight attendants bid, and we get a contract, and it either passes or not, and it goes based off that. How does that work?
Okay, so as far as pay goes, once the flight attendants put the contract in place and the company agrees to it, and the contract will be valid for X number of years, it specifies if you've only been employed for a year, how much money you make per hour. If you've only been employed for 2 years, and it goes up, obviously, the longer you've been with the company, the more money you make. So, and then there's, our pay system is very, very complicated in the sense that, if you're delayed, you're going to get a delay pay. If you've been diverted, if you were going to Los Angeles, but somebody got sick and, all of a sudden you have to land somewhere else, you will get different pay for that. If you worked past midnight and it's into your day off, because past midnight your day off begins, for example, you get paid for that, so there are different things. It's like, I don't even know how the pay analysts do it. I mean, thank goodness for computers, but that's how it works. But it all starts with hourly pay. Exactly when you pick up a trip and say the trip is worth 5 TFP, and I don't even remember what TFP stands for, time flown.
Trip for pay.
Trip for pay. There we go. And so you basically, just to make it simple, like if my hourly rate is $20 an hour, 5 times 20 is 100. So I make 100 right off the bat. That's the minimum I will make. But then you also get paid what's called per diem. So how many hours are you gone away from home? So if that trip is valued at 8 hours, because even though you only maybe flown 6, but the time, on the ground counted and things like that. And so you get X number of dollars per hour for those 6 hours as well. And
let's keep things simple and talk just about that. Let's go with TFP. So we said trips for pay. So is it a safe thing to say that TFP is like the hourly rate in Alaska's language?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's how I think of it. Like when I calculate how much money I'm going to make, that's the easiest way for me to calculate. Okay.
So there's that, and you mentioned per diem. Let's talk about how the per diem amount might change if you work a turn versus a trip.
Okay. So a turn, like your typical turn, it only counts as 8 hours. When I think of Los Angeles, I think that's what about they are. So 8 hours. So 8 hours, and I think our per diem pay is $250 an hour. So 8 times $250, what would be 16 plus another 4, so about $20, right? So you made $20.
You're good.
Wow. But say if you flew Los Angeles overnight and you gone away from home for 24 hours now, right? So multiply 24 times $250. So that's how much you made per diem. You know what I mean? Versus, so your turns are always worth less per diem because you are not gone from home as much,
Now, is the per diem with a turn versus a trip, is one taxable and one not, or?
Well, what used to be, and I think it changed now. So it used to be where per diem away from home was not taxable, but I believe Trump changed that.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he did. So, don't quote me on that, but I think it's all going to be taxable. Our per diem is not going to be, like non-taxable, or was it the deduction that changed? Something in per diem changed. Maybe it's not taxable, but I think we cannot deduct it. Like, for example, last year I could go through a per diem program and I would calculate how much money I have made per diem, and then I would not be taxed on that certain amount. But I think next year I will be.
Got it. So to keep things simple, TFP is the money you get paid for what the trip is worth, and we call it hourly rate, but it's calculated based off miles flown, distance. And then the per diem is the amount of hours you're away from home.
Yes.
You get paid for that.
Yes.
So you could look at that as maybe food money if you're working
and
a
that's
trip.
that's exactly what it was made for. But a lot of people, they either bring their own food or, whatever it is they do, they don't spend it. You know what I mean? And so it becomes another part of their income. So
interesting. What are some, for people watching this out there, what are some job misconceptions that at least you found out to be true? Maybe things you thought that the job is, and then once you started, you realized it's a little different. Not necessarily bad, just different. Is there anything you could think of that maybe people out there might be thinking it's this way and it might not necessarily be the case? Maybe.
Well, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is the crew, and that's not just flight attendants, the crew meaning the pilots too. That we just have this glamorous lifestyle and we go to this exotic destinations and we we go to parties and we do this and that and the other thing. The reality is, you get to that hotel room and most of the time you're so exhausted, we call it slam click. So you go into your hotel room and you slam the door and you click that lock because let's face it, you just got up at 4 o'clock to fly a trip at 6 a.m. and you just flew to Hawaii for another 6 hours. So you have been awake for roughly 11 hours already. And even though there's a beautiful sunset over there, all you want to do is just crawl into that bed. So that's one of the, and that is not to say that it's every trip. I mean, obviously, I've known flight attendants, especially our senior flight attendants, they bid around a New York place and they would actually bring that like evening wear, and they would bid New York trips. They would go to the theater. It's their evening out. That's what they do. They bring their, the shoes and their long gown, and that's their evening out, I've flown with pilots and flight attendants for whom biking is a passion. So they would bring their foldable travel bikes, and they bid specific destinations because it has a certain bike trail they want to try out, right? Or, I've flown with the pilot. It was so funny because he said, I'm going to be stepping out of the flight deck a lot. And I said, why? He said, because I just finished this bike race and we were in Honolulu.
You drank a lot of water.
Yeah, I drank a lot of water. And I'm like, okay, I gotcha. All right.
That's funny.
But that was his thing. He bid that trip specifically so he could ride that bike ride, so he could ride that race.
Right.
So yes, even though there is a glamour factor to it, it's not always a glamour factor. I always giggle. There's like a meme, and so it's divided in half. And the first half is there's this glamorous flight attendant in a miniskirt, and she's showing the exits, and it says what people think dating flight attendant is like, and the other shot is this woman passed out, and it said what it's really like.
Oh my God, there's a lot of truth to that.
There's so much truth to that because flying takes a lot out of you. You get tired, you get tired. And the thing is too, I think, especially for spouses, when you get home, because you haven't been home, you don't want to go out. I mean, I will be completely honest. When I'm home, I don't want to go anywhere. I've been gone. I just want to stay at home. I want to putt around the house. I want to do my thing. So, and my kids are like, oh, can we go do this and go that and do that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. But all I want to do is just go, and it's really funny. But, it's actually funny because my youngest and I had a conversation where, we went on a, soccer tournament. So we were gone for 3 days. Then he went to a camp for a week. And then after he came back from a camp for a week, he was going to go to Montana for a week and a half.
Wow.
And so I said,
I want to be your kid.
Right? Well, but then he tells me, and he melted down. He said, I just want to be home. He said, I haven't been home at all. And I said, like those 4 days when I'm gone and I come home and you're just rearing to go places and you want to do things and I just want to stay home. I said, this is exactly how I feel. And I could see the light bulb come on because, to them, they would be like, well, why wouldn't mom want to go somewhere? And I always go. I never, ever, ever say no. But I'm just saying the reality is such that, you come home and you just want to chill. You just want to be home. But I think, maybe in a way that makes a flight attendant a better spouse because they will come home and they will just do stuff around the house. They will do, they will just do things around the house.
Because back to, spending time with your kids or investing more in the time that you are around. You feel that since I was gone, now you do. It's not just that. It's probably like maybe even cleaning the house. I was gone for whatever and now I'm home. And so I guess it translates into many areas where you'll probably, do more. So interesting. So that's a big misconception.
Although, with my kids, I always tell them, I said, when I come back home, I could be cleaning the house or we could be doing something fun. So if you already clean the house, by the time I come home.
Interesting.
Well, because there's only so many hours in the day. Do you wanna scrub the toilets or do you wanna go to the park? I mean, come on, let's be real here. And because it's exhausting, and I remember when they were still little, I would come home from a 4-day trip and the house is a mess. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it was actually kind of funny because I remember talking to a senior flight attendant and I shared it with her. I said, I come home, I'm exhausted. I was commuting at the time. And she said, oh, Mariya, she said, I remember, and her kids were grown. They were actually going to a graduation or college, something with their kid. And her husband was flying in the back and she and I were in the jump seat. And she said, oh, Mariya, she said, I remember when my kids were little. And she said, I would open that garage door to come into the house. She said, and I would literally crawl through the hallway because there was no place to step on because there were toys and socks and laundry and this and that. Then she said, and I would just crawl my way through the house. Man. And she said that, the next 2 days I would spend cleaning, and it's just such a period in life, Yeah. And obviously how much, people in your family help, because I tell my kids, I'm like, hey, what do you want to do? Mom could be cleaning and mom could be having fun with you, and so
that's
it's just
a great
the way it
point.
is.
I've never thought of it that way, but it's true because if you show up to a clean house, you have time to do other stuff.
Exactly.
And that's kind of on them. Mariya, how would you best describe this flight attendant lifestyle? If someone out there wants to know, what could I expect in terms of a lifestyle? How would you describe it now that you've been doing it for 6 years? What words would you assign to it in terms of...
I would assign blessed. Blessed would be my first word. Blessed. Because I feel very, very blessed to be able to go the places where we go, and once you have a little bit of a control over your schedule, to decide where you want to go. So for example, I like Alaska, but not in the winter. I like it in the summer, right? So there's a hike in Juneau I like to do. There was a trip, in open time on that bulletin board. It was a Juneau trip, and I looked at the hours when we're going to be there, and I'm like, I'm going to have time for a hike. So I grabbed that trip. So not only am I going to Juneau and getting paid for it, I'm going to go and do my hike and get paid while I'm doing it. You know what I mean? So things like that. Or when you're, I like sunshine. So when it's winter in Seattle and I'm flying to Hawaii, I mean, come on, how could you feel but not blessed?
Right.
Or, when I travel with my kids, or, when my children want to travel, my kids, my boys are going to be flying from Montana in just a little bit. All I had to do is a couple of clicks of a button, they're flying back.
Wow.
It's easy,
And are they flying non-rev?
They're flying non-rev, what's called standby.
Great. So let's briefly talk about benefits, because I know a big reason for people out there I know many flight attendants, not just flight attendants, I know many people join the airlines for flight benefits.
Yes.
What is flight benefits?
So the flight benefits so the airplane has X number of seats. If, say it has 100 seats. There are 90 paying passengers, right? So there are 10 seats open. The plane is going to fly whether those seats are open or not. It's still going to take off and land. Those 10 seats are open. But say I'm flying this trip. The flight is going to Hawaii, and say I want to bring my husband along, and I'm going to tell him, hey, honey, you know what? There are 10 open seats over there. I'm going to book you on one. You can just hop on. It's not going to cost you a thing. We are taxed. We are taxed for that flight. But you're going to come and stay with me on my layover. So that's where the flight benefits come in, is that we don't pay, per a ticket. We obviously don't pay the same fare as the paying passenger. We just pay taxes on what that flight is in taxes. You know what I mean? Like, say, if you paid for a ticket, and then whatever government taxes are on that ticket, that's what we also pay.
And that's if like your children are not with you. But if you were with them on the plane, would you still be paying the taxes?
I believe so. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe so.
Okay.
I think.
And then when you yourself fly, you fly for free.
Yes, I fly for free, but I think for family you do pay taxes, and it might be different. But even if you do pay taxes, it's $30 or $40 versus $500, $600, $1,000 ticket. You know what I mean? So from that point of view, once your kids get older, and or even with the spouse,
fly
it's
them
fantastic. I mean, we have a lot of flight attendants. Like I said, for all the flight attendants, that's the best. The husband is retired, so he's at home all day. So she picks up this wonderful trip and she brings her honey along. I mean, how wonderful is that?
Yeah.
And
that's another thing. If you compare that to a 9-to-5, you can't do that.
You can't do that.
First of all, you're not going anywhere with a 9-to-5 job in terms of geographically. But yes, that's a cool thing that you could, and you could bring people on your layover on the trip.
You could bring
your friends.
Stay with you in
the hotel room. So that's something for people to, consider. They could bring friends or family or whoever.
Yeah, they totally could. And we have flight attendants do that, and pilots too. I mean, if they see there's tons of seats in the back, and he's flying to Maui, he'll bring his whole family along. Why not?
Wow.
The plane is going anyway, so it's not like the company is losing money on it, you know what I mean?
Right.
But the downside of it is that if the flight is full, then, nobody's getting on. You will possibly get the next flight, or maybe the next flight, or, something like that. So it's not always going smooth.
Interesting.
But, we have ways of looking up at what we call flight loads. We have ways of looking up of how full the airplane is going to be. And if it's going to be full, well, maybe, and you don't want to take a chance, then you don't take a chance.
Gotcha. I see why people join the airlines for those benefits. So there's initial training when we first start. We don't have a lot of time left, but there's initial training when you first start. You're done with that. You become a flight attendant. Is there some sort of an annual training that goes on that a flight attendant needs to keep coming back for?
Right.
Or how does is there any training once you're done with the initial, and how does that work?
So it's called recurrent training because obviously it occurs every year. So we have the opportunity. It has to be within the month of your hire, I believe, very, very close. Either the month that you were hired, like say if you were hired in March, then you have to take it in March, or you maybe a month before, maybe a month after. I can't quite be sure. I don't worry about it. I just go whenever the system gives it to me. But if I wanted it on a specific day, within that time frame, I would bid for it. I would tell the system, Like, okay, oh, my friend is going to take training, August 5th and 6th. I want to go then too. And so I asked the system for that, And so then I go and we have a training center here in Seattle, same where we did our initial training. And we just go through the same thing. And every year it's a different theme, whether it be, rafts, where we study a little bit more about rafts and evacuating in water, or, CPR, things like that.
How long is recurrent training?
It's just a day.
One day?
Mm-hmm, one day.
So you show up and there's 30 in your class?
30, 40, something like that, depending on how many people ask for that day.
And it's basically a refresher what your job is.
Exactly.
So opening airplane doors and things like that.
And you do a written test, so the written test could be composed of, emergency equipment and procedures and things like that. So you do your written test just to make sure that you've refreshed your knowledge.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Mariya, what are some necessary skills in your opinion? Maybe skills you found out. People skills. What are some skills you would tell people out there who are thinking about becoming a flight attendant? Skills that if they don't currently have, they should go get. What are some of those skills that you think?
You have to have people skills. I mean, that's a must, because you deal with people who maybe don't travel very often, or they're cranky, or they're tired, or they had death in the family, whatever the case may be, you have to have the people skills. Also, you have your crew. So the crew changes every time. So I could be flying the same trip, and I could have, potentially different flight attendants on every leg, right? So you need to have the ability to get along with people. So on the upside of it is that you could tell yourself, you know what, I can get along with anybody for 2, 3, 5, 6 hours, right? I mean, so that's the plus side of it. It's not like you're in the cubicle with them every day. But still, when the crew has fun together, people pick up on that, they know, they would be like, oh, that was the best flight ever. And it's just because it spills from the crew, from the attitude of the crew,
Absolutely.
How you joke with one another,
Absolutely.
if you're having fun, and you could be sitting on some stinky long delay. And, if the crew is upbeat and encouraging and everything else, people pick up on it. So I think, just people skills, that's all it comes down to. A little bit of compassion goes a long way too, because, and we actually just came from a training, and then somebody said, everybody has a story. So before you start assuming things, which, we as people, and I'm the same way, we assume a lot. Before you start assuming, just talk to that person. Maybe, they came on and they're cranky and they're rude. How do you know somebody didn't just die? I mean, that was a lesson to me. I had back when I was flying a lot in Alaska, this man comes on, reeks of booze. I mean, reeks of booze. And for us, it's a no-no. If somebody already smells a lot like alcohol,
right.
It's kind of like,
you don't want to deal with that.
You don't want to deal with that, because if they're going to become, violent or whatever at 30,000 feet,
right.
Where are you going to go?
Right.
And so he sits in the corner, and I came up to him and I'm like, hey, how you doing? Just trying to chit chat and see how drunk he is. I'm like, I want to see how much he's slurring. Right. And he's like, oh, he said, I'm on my way. He said, my mom just died.
Oh.
And so, and it's like, I mean, what do you say?
Yeah.
I mean, so he probably grabbed a couple of drinks and
yeah.
he said, okay,
yeah.
I mean, and left him alone. He slept the whole flight, but you just never know. My first assumption there is this man that he's unshaven, unshowered, reeks of booze. I'm like, oh, crap, but my mom just died,
So putting yourself in, not even in someone else's shoes, just realizing that you don't always know what people are dealing with, or where they're coming from, or why they're flying that day, and just kind of remembering that could go a long way for you and for the passenger.
Right, absolutely.
Is this job for everyone? Do you think anyone and everyone should apply?
No, I don't think so, because, flexibility is a big thing. Also, you have to realize that, you will be gone, and it's not for everybody. If somebody doesn't like, the whole airport thing and, sleeping in different hotel rooms and, and this and that, it's not a job for you, because even with the seniority, if this is the only job you have and you have to have it to make money, you'll be flying a lot. It might be fabulous trips, but you will be gone a lot, So no, you have to consider that. Also, as a flight attendant, you're home about half of the month. So you have to realize that, if you want to maintain your friendships, you have to plan in advance. It's not like, I mean, your friend who is living there would be like, hey, let's grab a coffee tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, I won't be home for another 4 days. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I run into that all the time, where, supper plans or anything like that. I've trained almost all of my friends. If you want my body to be there, you got to tell me a month in advance. If it's that important to you. And I actually had a friend who had a baby shower, and she told me a month in advance. I'm like, I'm glad you did, because I'm more likely to get it now. Exactly. But if I don't ask for it and then I have to fly a trip, well, what can I do?
Interesting. So just kind of realizing that and preparing for that. Last question. What's one thing you would change about your job if you could?
I would, for me personally, like where I'm at, the only thing I would change is the ability to the scheduling ability. If our trading system was just a little bit more flexible, for me, I mean, obviously for everyone, but you know what I mean? Like if I could do what I wanted to do with it, which is not possible, because if I want to do with things and you want to do things and 6,000 of us want to do things, well, who's going to fly the planes?
Right. There has to be a
happy medium. So that would be probably the only thing that I would change, because other than that, I mean, you have your glamorous trips and you have your work trips and you have your wonderful crews and you have your crews that are tired, and and you have passengers who are absolutely wonderful, and you have passengers who are just flown for 20 hours and they just don't even want to talk to you at the moment, So
that's the one thing you change.
Yeah.
Mariya, thanks for coming.
Oh, you're welcome.
Awesome. Hey guys, Yoel here. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it helpful, informative, maybe it answered a few questions you had about the profession, the career, or whatever it is my guest today does for a living. Also, if you know someone out there who might be curious to learn more about what my guest does, consider sharing the video. After all, I really created this space to do just that, to spread information about careers, about jobs with other people who might not know others who are doing what it is they're looking to do. Finally, if you liked and enjoyed the video, especially if you found it helpful, I'd love if you'd consider sharing and liking the video below. It helps me grow the platform, and by growing the platform, what that means is I could really reach more people. And by reaching more people, I could not only get more people on to share more information with others, but maybe I could shed light for more people in the journeys ahead of them that they might be considering on taking. Also, if you live in the Seattle area, my studio is up in Seattle, Washington. If you live in the Seattle area and you think you do something every day for a living that there might be other people out there who would love to learn more about, contact me. There should be an email in the About section in the channel. I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me. We'll put something on the calendar. I'd love to sit with you. Again, that's the intent of why I created this space. With that said, if you'd like the video again, I'd love if you'd like it. And if you found it helpful, if you enjoyed it, if you think it added to your journey and searching about the future you might be looking into, consider subscribing. Again, that grows the platform and it enables me to reach more people out there just as yourself, who's looking to learn more about any future that one of my guests is part of. All right, you guys, videos are coming out once a week. Thanks for your support, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.